As a teenager, I remember just getting stuck in a funk sometimes. I remember just maybe even every fall going through a time where I was just sad and maybe disillusioned, feeling lonely, discouraged. I remember times when I would go for a drive when I had a car or go for a walk before I had a car and just walk for hours or drive for hours and just kind of want to be alone but not really feel good alone, just not really feel good at all. Just really sad, kind of stuck in a funk or a depression. At times I thought maybe it was seasonal affective disorder when I heard about that. Like maybe it's about not having the sun out anymore, or maybe I just don't like life. Maybe life is just hard. And thinking about a lot of different things during times like that and wondering, what is this all about anyway? As I've grown older, I'm assuming, most of us have been through moments like that. And, maybe some people are just naturally joyful and happy most of the time, but I think a lot of people in our culture end up going through periods of time, maybe even long periods of time, feeling depressed and discouraged. My name is Monica Maurer. I am a licensed therapist and supervisor. I'm also the director of the Center for Transformation. And at the CFT Institute, we exist to partner with therapists to help therapists grow personally so that they can also grow professionally. And many of us as therapists have come into this field because we have had our own personal struggles in the past, or maybe we continue to have them. We're not perfect, we're human, and we're trying to figure our stuff out as well. And the more we can figure out our stuff, the more we are going to be able to help others figure out theirs. So when we think about the topic of depression or just sadness, right? What is depression? Depression is prolonged sadness. It's sadness that I cannot return to joy from. Sadness means I've lost some of my life. And if I've lost some of my life, even if that loss is something that's intangible, I can't really explain it, then I end up feeling depressed if I cannot return to joy from that sadness. So our goal is to figure out how to return to joy so that we can stay in a place of joy. Joy is supposed to be our normal state as humans. It's supposed to be the place our brain always goes back to. But unfortunately, that is not as easy as it might sound like when I say it like that. Return to joy. What does that even mean when I'm dealing with a major loss or just a propensity toward depression? So there is a thing that happens in our minds and our hearts that causes us to stay kind of locked down or stuck in depression. And that is when our relational circuits are off. When our relational circuits are off, it means we just want to make a problem, person, or feeling go away. We don't want to listen to what others feel or say. Our mind is locked onto something upsetting and having trouble kind of thinking outside of that upsetting thing. And it's ruminating, possibly just staying stuck in that space rather than being able to sit in and meditate on things that are good. And it's not just circumstantial. If it were circumstantial, then people who survived the Holocaust or people who lived in the Great Depression wouldn't have been able to experience joy at all because of how deep and drastic those events were. I think about, oftentimes talk about that scriptural passage about Paul and Silas in jail. They were singing praises to God and they didn't know that they were going to get out of jail, and yet they were singing praises. How were they able to do that in the jail cell when, many of us are sitting in our luxurious homes and have plenty of food and have all the circumstantial things we need, yet we are still feeling sad and discouraged and depressed? So our relational circuits go off and sometimes stay off, although it's in our best interest to have them always on. They go off and they sometimes stay off, and that is propitiated by a couple of things. It is because of unprocessed trauma, because of attachment pain, hunger, or fatigue. Those are 4 reasons why the relational circuits would stay off. And so if you're finding yourself in a depressed state, it is important to consider those things. Am I nourishing myself with food? Am I nourishing myself with sleep? Have I lost someone important to me, lost a relationship? Am I in some attachment pain, which, by the way, is the worst pain the brain knows? Or have I got some unprocessed things from the past, traumas that I have not dealt with yet, that I need to deal with in order to be able to return to and live in joy? So those are some things to think about if you find yourself in a place where you are experiencing deep sadness. Now, as Christians, oftentimes we find ourselves in what we call a desert season of our lives. And a lot of, scripture talks about this, and I've heard many sermons and conversations about this topic of a desert season. What does it mean to be in a desert season? And I think in the Middle East, where a lot of the Bible was written, or all of the Bible was written, the setting was the desert oftentimes. And so there's some great information on a Bema podcast I was listening to recently, where they were discussing, what does it mean to be in a desert season and in our lives. And sometimes that's the case, whether or not we're maybe having trouble sleeping, or we've lost someone we love, or an important relationship has been impacted most recently, or we're having trouble at work, or whatever it is. We could find ourselves in a season where we don't feel connected to God or other people. Maybe it's a time of loneliness or deep sadness. And in those seasons, there's oftentimes such purpose. The purpose has to do with the fact that God is still there. He is still there. He is present, although our relational circuits may not be on to perceive him. I love that poem, Footprints, and I know it's an oldie but goodie. It's been around for so long, but I'll oftentimes find myself thinking about that when I'm in a point of crisis or sadness myself. Like, God is here. He's carrying me. I cannot perceive him or feel him, but he is definitely here. And I do think it is our task as humans to reach out to God continually in these desert seasons, to remember God is here. I'm not alone. And even though I can't feel God, I'm going to continue to pursue God, to try to experience him. And at some point I will have a breakthrough. We know that the heaviness we experience during periods of sadness have to do with the back of our brain being triggered, the attachment center or the amygdala, and my brain is asking, how can I get what I want? And really perceiving that something is missing. And the joy center is in the prefrontal cortex. When we can feel like somebody's there for us, even if there is sadness, we can still have joy. If we perceive that we're not alone, that God is there, or that someone else is with us and sharing the impact of what we're going through, even if they're not going through it themselves, we can experience joy in the midst of sadness. It's really when we feel like we are completely alone in our struggle that we don't quite know what to do with that. It's quite overwhelming, and we oftentimes stay stuck in sadness. So the idea in terms of sadness and despair, grief, is to connect with God somehow, some way. Connect with a trusted other somehow, some way. Even if that means that the sadness isn't going to go away. It just means that someone's going to be with me, caring for me, listening to me, soothing me. If I have a sense of being seen, soothed, safe, and secure, even in my pain, it can soothe that part of my brain, the cingulate cortex, that lets me know that I'm not alone, that somebody accurately and tenderly understands what I'm going through. They're here for me, and I am a person who's worthy of love and belonging and connection, and even to be enjoyed in my pain. When I experience that, I can get out of that depression or sadness, that place of being stuck. So such an important thing for us to learn as humans, but as therapists, because we have sadnesses and discouragements as well. We oftentimes have our capacity maxed out because of the stresses and the pressures of our job and our family lives. And so we need this place of someone else understanding us, hearing what we're going through, being there for us in a way that brings us a soothing so that we can return to joy, even if the sadness we're struggling with is still there. So thank you for listening today. I look forward to talking to you again very soon.